It tech only works if you actually turn it on. There we go. DonovanScience.com. I'm going to give you that link right now because that's my website. Well, one of the two main websites I have. I post a lot of stuff on there. And my goal for today is to engage you as a learner. But if I fail to do so right now, then I hope you find something on that site that's useful to you because I try to put a lot of stuff on there. Now, I work at a high school, but I also work with some middle school teachers from time to time. They're my friends. I don't work with them officially. But that's kind of my focus. But a lot of the stuff I talk about can be used at any level almost. This link here, I'm going to share with you bit.ly. I love my bit.lys, /FM possibility. FM stands for Fort Madison. Possibility is my word of the day. So if this was Pee-wee's Playhouse, we'd all be screaming and waving our arms. Which, I like that. People still laugh at that one. All right. I taught for 9 years in the science classroom. I have taught 7th grade through 12th grade, different classes, 3 different districts in Iowa, 6 different principals. I've had a fun career so far. This is my 2nd year doing what I'm doing now. I actually started up in Cedar Rapids for 3 years, went to South Hamilton, to a small rural school, and then a couple years after that we went one-to-one. I was there for 3 years during one-to-one before I went to Ames and had a fun year driving across town every day between the high school and the middle school because why not? I need a challenge. And then we went one-to-one and I became a tech integrationist. So I'm going to talk about my own experiences in my own classroom, but also I've got a chance to work with a lot of great teachers in my district, outside my district, so I'm going to kind of share stuff all from them. But that link here, since my word of the day is possibility, that's going to take you to a Padlet. Padlet is one of my top 10 tools, and a Padlet is great for collaboration. Pretty much it's open. So if you follow that link, it's going to take you to Padlet. If you don't know what I mean by Padlet, I'm just talking gibberish to some of you. All right, this is what it looks like. Pretty much you can all add to this. All you have to do is double click somewhere. A little box is going to appear. You don't have to put your name or anything. You don't have to sign in. You don't have to log in. But my question to you is, what is your new possibility? If we're going to go through a whole day of training and workshops and stuff like that, you should have something new you can do in your classroom. And with technology, there's a reason I use the word possibility because that's what technology allows us is the new possibilities in our classroom. For me, I became happiest as a teacher once I started using technology effectively in my classroom. Because I'd always wanted to do some things. I'd always wanted to change things, but I never did until I figured out how to do it correctly, and technology was the way I did that. So that's going to be up there. I'm not going to edit anything unless somebody finds it and posts something inappropriate. That's there for you guys, so use it. So again, my question to you today, we're going to go back to that word a lot, is what are the possibilities? Because that's what you always got to be thinking is forward. I don't get stuck in the past. I only have one direction forward. And luckily, that was Iowa State football slogan a year ago, and so I have that poster in my room. I try not to look at the record too much, but I have that up there. One way forward. This is a picture. I know for some of you in the back, you're not going to be able to read this. Don't worry. All my links are on that DonovanScience.com page. You go to presentations, Fort Madison PD. You're going to find everything. This is actually a picture I created about a couple weeks ago, and I tweeted it out because it was in my head, and stuff's in my head. I got to get it out. So pretty much this is what it looks like when you integrate technology but do not adjust your teaching. If you just use technology to use technology, you're going to end up a Wile E. Coyote. It's not going to end well. There's going to be an Acme explosion in your future. It may be really fast to start with, but it's not going to end well. So to me, that's a rocket attached to a wagon. That's how I think technology is used in a lot of places because we don't look at our teaching. Technology itself is not going to prove anything. It is technology paired with good pedagogy that's going to change it. It always has to be about student learning. That always has to be our focus no matter what. It's never the tool. The tool is how we're getting to student learning. And yes, as teachers, we have to learn how to use the tools, but we always have to be focused on the pedagogy. If you use bad pedagogy, doesn't matter what else you use with it, it's not going to be effective. So everything I'm talking about, you have to have that lens of pedagogy there. SAMR is one of my top 2 frameworks. I have a lot of top lists. But SAMR, you look at the different levels. And sometimes in SAMR, pedagogy is not there. That's why I like TPAC. TPAC is another framework which puts it that pretty much when we're using technology, we also have to be thinking about our content knowledge. We also have to be thinking about our pedagogical knowledge. All 3 of those are going to matter together. Now, roller coasters. I love roller coasters. There's a reason why I have this up here. It's not just a random thought. I go on roller coasters anytime I can. My wife is scared of them. Last time she went on a roller coaster with me, she broke my hand. Okay, she at least cracked it a lot because she was scared. That's why she doesn't get to go on roller coasters with me anymore. But she did go on a roller coaster in the last month. Because we now have the ability, the new possibility with technology, we can use things like this. This is Oculus Rift. If you don't know that name, it's going to be big, probably in the next year or so. Company bought by Facebook for lots and lots of money, but they are some of the leaders in virtual reality. Not virtual reality in the 90s, virtual reality today. You take this headset, you put it on, it connects to the computer using that for its processing power, and pretty much you are in a virtual world. They're trying to find a way to add sensors to it so you pick up your hands, you have virtual hands. So you can start manipulating things. In the next year or so, you're going to buy a consumer version of this. Right now, you can buy this. It's a developer version, costs a lot of money. You need a high-end computer to run it and all that, and then you have to figure out how to use the software. But technology nowadays, I can replace that with this. There he is. Google Cardboard. It's made out of cardboard. Google's very straight to the point. Pretty much you can make this for a couple dollars. It is cardboard, a couple lenses, because you need lenses for this, magnets on the side, that's you don't almost need, and Velcro. You can probably go into your classroom and except for the lenses, make this right now. I paid for this. That's why it has all the labels on it, because I was lazy. And I paid $12 whole for this. But if I take my phone right now, and I open the app, which was free, put it in here, I now have virtual reality. And my favorite app is the roller coaster app, because I love showing it to people. Because if I open up the roller coaster app, put this on, you put this on your face, you look silly for a second. But if you turn your head, you're looking in a different place. You look right, you look up, you can look into the car that you're riding in. And I love giving this to people while they're standing, because you wait about 5-10 seconds, and then they start doing this. You know, they get a little tipsy, because it's messing with the brain. I don't need thousands of dollars. I can do this with a couple dollars. And a device that so many people have in their pockets. This is a new possibility. Again, Google Cardboard. I bought this because it also fits my giant phone. If you want to see this later, I can show it to you. But I love gadgets, but I also love stuff like this, because I can have my students make these. Get out their phones. Sorry, I have no problem with phones. And shove them in there and have a virtual reality system. As a science teacher, my mind goes straight to the point, well, why don't I just use Google Maps, send them to the bottom of the ocean, and look around? I can take in images from the locations. They can actually explore the moon. They can explore Mars with this. For fun, one of the apps you get right away is you can actually go watch a Paul McCartney concert and be on stage with him and look around during a live performance. And my favorite part is when the flames shoot up from the pyrotechnics right in front of you. I swear you feel the heat every time. But this is a new possibility, and it's not a lot of money. It's something that's very cheap. That's my classroom in South Hamilton. When after 3 years of teaching in Cedar Rapids, my wife got a new job, her first job as a lawyer. So I moved, because I can find a job anywhere apparently. And I came here to South Hamilton. I keep telling her that. In Cedar Rapids, I replaced a physics teacher who taught for over 30 years. I had every physics tool you could ever want. I had stuff I didn't want, but I had it. It was awesome as a new teacher to have all this equipment. I went to South Hamilton. My equipment was from the 1960s, because after Sputnik, they started sending science equipment to lots of schools. They still had the original boxes. Okay, they didn't have a physics teacher. They had science teachers who taught physics. But I was a physics teacher because I love physics. I have a degree in physics because it was easier than civil engineering. I tell people that. This is my classroom I had then. So I came to this classroom for 2 years. I struggled to teach physics because I didn't have the equipment to give my students the experiences I knew they needed as students. I also had this curved back wall, which is to this day the worst thing about teaching in my career was that curved wall. Nothing else. I am very much organized, anal retentive. I like my classroom to have symmetry. There's a curve on the left side ruined that for me. Third year at South Hamilton, we went 1-to-1. I got happy because I saw new possibilities. I was able to do things I wasn't able to do before. I couldn't buy lab equipment because I was teaching 4 different science classes. I had such a small budget, I could barely buy consumables for the year. Not let alone trying to get power supplies and even Hot Wheels cars. I couldn't really buy anything. But with the laptops, I had virtual labs. I had videos of these experiments being done we could have discussions about. We could connect to scientists in the labs. And I actually had a contact that could connect to some data from some of our particle accelerators. They were sharing it with us. This was new possibilities because we had technology, but more importantly, we had the technology in the students' hands. Because I've had technology in my classroom. You can't see it, but right here's a smartboard. First one to have it because we tested it with me. You collected dust. Because it was technology for me, and I don't like technology for me. I want it for my students. I had the projector. I even created a smartboard using a Wiimote and a Bluetooth pen. It was really fun one day, but the students' hands, that's where things kind of changed for me. One of the first things I did was I got connected. If you don't know these symbols, learn a couple of them. Teaching is too difficult of a job to do it alone. I also think about if you ever play Zelda, you're going to need this. You're going to get that sword right away. This is your sword. Social media is useful. It's not just about posting what you had for dinner. It is actually a way you can connect to other educators, connect to professionals. I don't have to visit a whole lot of websites. My resources come to me in the form of one of these. And of course, I put Twitter at the front because I love Twitter. Because I have my PLN. PLN stands for Professional Learning Network. I have people I can ask questions of. The one in the lower right is called Voxer. This is one I used on my drive this morning here. Voxer is kind of like walkie-talkie, but with a small group. So I have this group of Iowa educators. In our focus, we kind of started this because we went to EdTech conference together. But we ask questions of each other. We have discussions. All I have to do is hit a button, and I can post. And people will respond. And I can get feedback. And so this is a group that I met through Twitter, met them in person at an EdTech conference, and then later we moved to Voxer, which is a more personal thing. This morning on my ride here, I asked them a question. What is one thing you would share about using technology with teachers? And they gave me responses before I even got here, which meant some of them had to wake up early then. But it's simple things. It's always focused on the learning, always focused on the student were some of the biggest things they shared. And I can tell you some of the other stuff if I get to listen to them later because they're still sending me messages. Social media is a great way for teachers. We can get our help. I taught at South Hamilton. There was no other physics teacher, no other earth science teacher, no other engineering teacher, no other environmental science teacher there. I had science teachers, but they weren't in my content specifically. This is how I connected. This is how I got resources. This is how I learned. I connected with some educators in Colorado who are doing the flipped classroom. John Bergman and Aaron Sam, some of the big names if you hear anything about a flipped classroom. I was asking them questions. I implemented it. I wanted to do some standards-based reference grading. I have to call it that because it wasn't really standards-based grading. So I was talking with people across the state, across the country. And this is how I did that. Instagram. I actually like Instagram for connecting with some educators. I like to take pictures of what's going on in my school, stuff I'm seeing, share that out. If a student's in there, I blur their face or I make sure I don't see their face. That's just me. I like to keep their privacy because it's my decision to post it, not theirs. But Instagram is also another way to do that. And then Google+. Not a lot of people go on Google+, but that's a good thing then. You get less spam. And it's a lot of educators. And then blog. I blog all the time. It's a way for me to reflect and get things out of my head. But it's also a way for me I can share stuff today and I can make connections with other people. I have some conversations I've started on my blog that carried over into real life once I met the people. So social media, easiest way for as teachers we can get going forward. Just because you don't have to do a whole lot to begin with. Create an account, replace the egg with your actual face so people know who you are, and then lurk. That's the correct term, is to lurk. Start following people, see what they're saying. Formative assessment tools. That's my number 2. Number 1 is get connected. Number 2 is learn how to use formative assessment tools. We can't teach one size fits all. Lesson plans can't be laminated. We need to make sure that if our focus really is on students, then we have to know if our students are learning or not. Technology allows us to do that very easily. Up here is soccer. That's one of the oldest ones around that I still use. One of the ones I like to use in my classroom because I can do a quick formative assessment with my students and get feedback and be able to change stuff for the next day. Because I had always done exit tickets. You know, a little piece of paper with a question on it, hand it to my students, they hand it back to me. I get the nice little pile of papers. I take it, and then I forget about it. Because I get busy, I do other things, I check it maybe in a week or so. Like, oh wait, they didn't know that. By then it's too late. Whereas with Socrative or any of the other tools really, I got a chart of the information right away, question by question. I could figure out right away, they're not getting this. I can't go forward until they get this. So it's real easy. Kahoot, Kahoot's a hoot. It's one of my favorite ones out there. I've been at the National Tech Conference. I saw almost 1,000 people playing Kahoot at once, or at least trying to. They had to turn off the sound because it would make a noise every time somebody submitted an answer. Think about it, every time there was a question, 1,000 people hitting the button. It was loud. But that's a really fun one, and kids like that because it's fun, it's engaging, and still at the end, you get that data about whether or not they're learning. Kahoot is by far one of my favorites. But you don't have a device for every student. This is called Plickers. Plickers, you actually get these little cards, you give them to your students. You have one device, could just be a cell phone. You actually kind of scan these to get their responses, and then you have that data automatically compiled for you. I used to use these cards, and I got these from a professor I worked at Iowa State. The idea, they said A, B, C, D on them. And that's how I did formative assessments for devices. So I'd ask a question, they raise their card. This case here, I can do the same thing, but I can scan that and have it automatically calculated for me. I go and I check that data before I go home. I know exactly what I need to do differently tomorrow. There are a lot of options out there. Of course, I got to talk about Google Forms because what a lot of people don't get, Google Forms does a lot of things for you. You just don't know it. People are always amazed when I say go into form after you collect the data, hit form, summary responses. Because what Google Form will do automatically for you is create charts and tables and all this for your information. So we had, I sent out a form to all of our high school students. I got back just under 800 responses. This is questions related to social media, digital citizenship. There's no way I'm going through and counting each of those. I went to the summary responses. I had these beautiful pie charts and bar graphs, all about their answers. I knew exactly my top feedback points I needed right away. I could tell right away that number one, they're on Facebook. Number two, they're on Snapchat. Okay. But that's information I had right away. I didn't have to go and do a lot of extra work. So it's also about making your job easier so you can do it better by being more centric. When I got to South Hamilton, I taught earth science for kind of the first time. Through the textbook. The textbook was only about 8 years old. I was not going to get new textbooks for a while. And the problem with that is because a year or so earlier, Pluto was no longer a planet. You wouldn't know it from my textbook. You wouldn't know anything about the discussion that went into that or all the new objects they had discovered. My textbook was out of date the day they printed it. That's how it is with most textbooks. But yet, school spends how much money on the textbook to buy how many copies. I stopped using it once I got my computers. I still had them in the classroom because they were a resource, but they weren't the main resource for my students anymore. Instead, I curated. I didn't collect, I curated resources. This up here is called Flipboard. It is one of my favorites to use with the staff I work with right now because it's a magazine-style format. You get to see a quick snippet. You get to see some beautiful pictures. And do you know how hard it is to add to a Flipboard? Pretty much I get to a website page I like, and I click that. Then I tell what magazine to go to, and then I'm done. That's all I have to do. So if I find these resources online and I want to keep them for my students, I just click that button, put it into that magazine. So for my teachers I work with, I have 3 magazines set up. One on formative assessment tools, one on Google Apps, one on general one-to-one stuff. And I add stuff all the time to that. But in the classroom, I would do the same thing. I would have content-specific, unit-specific resources. I put them in there because, well, like ck12.org. If you teach math, science, or a couple other, I have to check how much they've added in the last year, ck12.org, there might be a dash in there, was an initiative that came out of California to provide free PDF textbooks for all students in California. That's what it was 8 years ago. Now they have full online digital interactive text with labs and videos and all this stuff on there, but students can still download stuff to their computer if they don't have access at home. I gave that link to my students every time we started a new unit. They got the link to the, I could pull resources from them into my own little book for them to use. And the nice thing about that, they were updated yearly. So if all of a sudden Pluto is a planet next year, I would have an up-to-date textbook. Or I would just collect news articles, papers written by scientists, or anything else, as long as they get the information. This is EduClipper. I haven't read a lot of EduClipper, but it's one of the ones I see has a lot of promise. It was created by Adam Bello. It is one of the ones where there's a lot you could do with it. That also means it's going to take a little bit more time to learn how to do everything with it. Or something like Flipboard is really quick, EduClipper gives you a lot more options, but you're going to have to learn a little bit more. And this is one I know people like, Symbaloo. Symbaloo, it saves as little icons. So you think like apps on a phone, you just tap it to get to those resources. So you could create a new Symbaloo for each class, each topic, have those resources there. You can organize it by what type of resource. But it's another one of these digital curation tools. And there's a lot of them out there. Scoop It is another one. Digo. I mean, heck, you could just see on a Google Doc with links in it. But I kind of like these because they're a little better user interface. This is one of those big points you have to learn, though, is that tools go away. That over time, some things are going to change. And what's a free tool now may become paid later. Scoop It was one of my favorites. They wanted to charge me. I said, goodbye. I'm going to find a new tool. Don't get too attached to a tool. Get attached to how you're doing things. There's always going to be a new tool to replace it. I gave my students choice. They didn't have to do that one way. They could pick the way they did that. I chose these 4 images because the teacher I worked with, French teacher, one of the biggest things I enjoyed last year, she had always done this project with posters. Then she's like, okay, I want to go beyond. I'm going to give students options on how they want to do this. So it has to be shared with the class, has to be created by them, has to meet learning goals. That was what she told them. She had students that used iMovie on our computer. They made their video. You guys using Chromebooks, you got Wii Video, that works well. They made ThingLink. ThingLink are interactive images. You can put little things attached to them, like ThingLink. Some of them made Prezi. Not a huge fan of Prezi myself, but the student liked it, so I not. And if they put effort into it, it can look really good. One student made an iPhone app for the assignment. Wasn't told to. Teacher had no idea how to do it. The student wanted to do this. The student knew they still had to get the assignment done. They were responsible for getting it done. The more time into that one assignment than probably anything else that school year, and probably learned the most because of it, because she was engaged. She wanted to create this. She shared it out, and that was really cool. I don't know how to make an iPhone app. I can add a page to my screen, but even I don't know how to do that, and this kid just ran with it, and that was awesome. But giving students choice is a big way to do this. Because engagement, we know if they're engaged, they're more likely to learn. If they get a choice, probably more likely to be engaged. This is one of the things I've been harping on a lot lately. Feedback. This is always where I say some statements that people don't agree with. I don't view letter grades as feedback. I don't view scores as feedback. For learning, feedback has to be helpful in getting that student to go forward. A grade and a score is kind of like a stop point. Whereas I want to give feedback that's going to get them to move forward. Upper left, Kaizena. Kaizena is audio feedback for students. You can also put other resources in that. I love Kaizena. They're always adding new resources, changing things up, updating, listening to teachers. You send them a tweet, they'll respond to you. And it works with Google Docs. Here, this is MoveNote. Sometimes instead of audio, I'm going to do video because I want them to look at me talking to them, and I can kind of highlight things as I go along. And there is something to be said for if the student sees you talking, not just listens to you talking, they see you talking. Sometimes they're more engaged than just listening to audio, but that's something you could do too. We have so many different ways to provide feedback, just even in a Google Doc. You can suggest, you can comment, you can type directly into the document, you can use things like Kaizena, you can add things like MoveNote. All of this, we can focus on giving our students good feedback. I'm probably not giving feedback on every assignment, but I'm also probably not giving as many assignments as I did in the past. Instead, I'm focusing on quality feedback to my students using tools available to me and to them. Kaizena, I can leave an audio comment. Student can respond to me with audio back. We can have a conversation in their document where they can be asking questions to go forward. Whereas if I gave them a letter grade or a score, that would be it. These are the 4 C's about 21st century learning. Creation, collaboration, communication, critical thinking. And I think I've covered almost all of them. Creation, giving students choice. They can create things. A worksheet is not creation. So what can they do with that information? How can they use that? Thinking of Bloom's taxonomy. One of my other favorite pyramids. Go to the top. What do we want our students to do with that? Collaboration. This is why I love Google. Google Docs is the easiest way to collaborate. You share it with them. I work with a lot of people, and I don't have to be next door to them to work with them. Because we have our shared resources, we can collaborate in a lot of different ways. Padlet, even Padlet's a good example of how we can collaborate today. You guys can be putting there your new possibility. That's collaboration. social media is another way I collaborate with people. In our master's class, we had 4 people spread out over a long distance. We're able to collaborate together at real time using just those free tools we have available to us. Communication. So much easier to communicate with people nowadays. I used to have to send, I remember my first year of teaching, I'd have my list of parents I'd had to email every Friday. And I would sit down at the end of the day on Friday and I'd email those parents because I had to email them every week. I didn't have that once I went one-to-one because I had Google Site or Google Calendar. I had something to communicate with my parents. We were posting online. We would share out resources. The parents always knew what they wanted. I flipped my classroom one year, and I created some resources for my students. And I say I flipped. I can tell you more about what I actually mean by that later. But I actually had parents who watched the videos and stuff I would create with their kids to review. They would have popcorn review night before the test, sit down together, watch the videos, eat popcorn, and talk about it. And that was communication with parents that I never had before. And the last one's the most important, is critical thinking. I want to create thinkers. I don't want kids that could just follow the steps. So I also have to think about that. How can I use technology to do that? When you think about the Sammer scale, modification, and redefinition. To really get to those levels, you got to go beyond basic thinking. You got to get into that critical stuff. I'm going to tweet this out at some point. I just have to learn how to write simply. Biggest complaint I get from people is like, oh, the computer's going to go break down. The internet's going to be bad. I'm going to drop my computer into a river. I have some stories. But no. Technology is going to break, but it's a pencil. You keep using it. You find ways around. Pencil breaks. You either get a new pencil, you break it in half, sharpen from that. If the internet goes down, well, you can use things offline. If that resource doesn't work, you find another resource. We have to teach our students how to think about this. We also have to teach ourselves because it's so easy to get into that negative point and say, well, it's going to not work, then never try. The only time we really fail is when we fail to try. I had a sign in my classroom for the last 5 years that said failure is an option, but failure to learn is not. We're going to make mistakes. Things are not going to work out. Fluorescent light bulbs and something else explode on me in my science classroom. Didn't stop me. I kept going forward. I had really good health insurance, but I kept going forward. So don't let that be why you don't go forward. And I'm going to end with this. It's only 5 minutes long, so I think that's good. Just what are the possibilities? If you're using technology, we have to think about how things are different. I think back to just even when I started teaching 11 years ago to today. And I know some of you have been teaching longer. Think about how different technology is. What are those new possibilities? Because if technology and the world around us keep changing, but we don't, then whose future are we preparing them for? It's not theirs. More likely our past. So what new possibilities? What can we do different? But one of the biggest advice, and I'll share this from the Voxer group I have, there's a lot out there to get overwhelmed with. Pick one thing or so at a time, work at it, get help from others. There's your PLN, there's social media, and keep going forward. Don't get stuck. So that's all I have. I'm around all day. If you have questions for me, I can always talk more because I don't mind talking. So thank you.